What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Run Pure Sports MLB Swing for the Fences show. We're here breaking down this Tuesday MLB slate. Looks like we got 11 games, joined by my two guys, DC and Mangone. And we're coming off another night last night with super low scoring. I think the highest scoring team on the entire schedule last night was 6 runs, and I believe wasn't it the Diamondbacks who were facing the best pitcher? It's we talked about on the show a little bit yesterday. Scoring is very, very down right now, and it looks like there's no signs of things turning around. Mangone, DC, myself, and Title talked about it yesterday. Just wanted to get your take on the whole thing before we kind of dive into the slate. I mean, like I said, scoring very low, remained low yesterday. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not juicing, if you're not like team juice baseballs or juice the players, like I don't know what you're doing. Like it's terrible. I actually, when I was younger, I think like college or high school, I wrote like a report on like why steroids in baseball is a good thing, because like it's just better for the game. It's more fun. Like this is absolutely terrible. I want runs. I want to be entertained, and I'm not entertained. I'm bored. It just sounds awful. I don't even want to sign up for DFS slates. Like I still haven't even signed up for today. I just opened up the lobby and I was like, okay, not to sign up, even though I don't want to. I think there is an edge to a certain degree. I think you like playing chalk is a terrible idea right now. Like whatever the chalk is, I just don't want to play it because it just makes no sense. And yeah, there are ways to take advantage of it, but I don't think it's a good time. I'll just say that. Like it's like I don't want to run downstairs and like, put on the games. I'm not excited to. It's not a good product right now, but there are ways to take advantage of it, ways to win money. I mean, Hoop, you've proven that for sure. You've had a nice start to the year. So there are ways to give an edge, but I'm definitely not having a good time watching. I'll say that.
Yeah, I feel like it's even getting worse though. Like I had a hit, a couple hits a couple weeks ago, but now it just seems like now it's getting worse. We talked about a little bit on the show. Like, all right, you got to kind of focus in on the power bats that can hit, the home runs. We saw it last night with Yordan Alvarez. He hit a bomb. Like he's one of the few guys that can overcome these baseballs, but whatever they're using, if they're using like these, dumbed down baseballs, but still it's just hard. I don't know. I don't know what the right move is in terms of constructing lineups. I mean, we talked about it yesterday, like, okay, you need to stack because if there's a team that, comes in and strings together 7 hits and scores 5 runs in an inning, you're going to need that, but that's just not even happening. So do you just target power bats, guys that can hit home runs? Like if you're going to target the Astros, you just go with guys like Alvarez and Kyle Tucker and maybe a bunch of 2 or 3 man sacks? I don't know what the answer is at this point. I mean, I'm going to continue to build my teams the same way. But we talked about it a little bit yesterday, and I thought about it more last night when I was just watching these games just out. I'm like, I don't know if this is the best approach. So I might start to look into taking a different approach. I mean, what do you think, DC? We just talked about it yesterday, and we kind of backed the stacking thing. But the more I thought about it last night, I don't know if that's necessarily the right move.
It's tricky right now. Like Mangone said, I think he brought up a good point, trying to get away from the chalk in general, especially the chalk pitching. I'm, looking at ownership projections a lot more just because you can get away with some low owned pitchers, right? And maybe that could be a way if the highest owned guys, because have a rare off night, you can gain an advantage because there's going to be cheap pitchers that have good nights every night. So you could look at it that way. But yeah, like last night, it's like a 3% owned David Peralta, right? Hits a home run in the first inning on a 7-game slate. That shouldn't be like the end of the world in terms of like, I can't, but it's like, well, it wasn't one of like 5 or 6 home runs. I don't know how many there were in the end. It wasn't many. Most slates are like that. And yeah, I don't know for sure what the proper adjustment is. It hasn't been the best opening month for me. The pitchers have been good, but I mean, everybody's got good pitchers. So you're not going to take.
Yeah. To say you're nailing pitching on a slate means nothing anymore. I mean, who was the dude? It was the Baltimore guy yesterday, Wells, right? Like he was 5.1K. Yeah. Just we talked about it. I mean, we said you could play him on the show yesterday, and he did great. If you played him, he did great. But then the problem is you're spending up on these bats that don't do anything. So yeah, I mean, I don't know.
What can you do? You continue to think about it, look at the data, try to make the best, constructed teams that you can, and hope it turns your way. I mean, who knows? We don't have any idea how long this type of offensive output will continue. But like you said, there doesn't appear to be any end in sight. Another day where mostly cold weather. I will say I have started betting a lot of unders, not every under, but like 5, 6, 7 on an 11 game slate. I've bet 4 or 5 unders so far. And those are, like anytime it's like 2 good pitchers with semi-rested bullpens and cold weather, it's like these games are all going like 2-1, 3-1, 3-2. It seems like every night. So those are hitting. So that's nice, but doesn't help us too much from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, and tonight again, you got the 10.5 total in Coors. After that, there's a couple 8.5s and a bunch of 7s. So I mean, again, a bunch of low totals to choose from. Man, going any other thoughts here? On this low scoring and the impact for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, a couple of things kind of came to mind when you guys were talking. I like what DC said about like the pitching, because like if you can fall into like I said yesterday, I've used this example a lot, but James Harden at 80% just busting, you can fall into the 80% pitcher, the guy that everyone's on busting, that are not even just busting, but like you just gain an edge by like having like maybe 12 more points. You get a 24 and their guy gets 12. That's massive. So I think that's definitely something to look at, especially when it doesn't feel like there's that much risk to do it when you get these cheaper options. Another thing, just full on punting a position. Who cares if you get a 0? I mean, I could win GPPs with a 0 when my offenses were going nuts. Now it seems like it's something that you can just do with ease. So that's another thing I think about. And then when you build with an optimizer, this is something that came to mind because it happened to me yesterday. I wasn't playing MLB. I was like, I don't really want to play much. And I opened it up and I saw the contests were still open. And JSU made a suggestion of something to play yesterday. And I said, you know what? I'll just throw like a couple teams in this lower dollar stuff and just see what happens. Stacked up Seattle and Houston, like JSU said. Yordan Alvarez hit a home run. Well, when I went my projections and ran the team, and I just did it, I'm telling you, in like literally 2 seconds, I did a 5-3 and I just called it a day. I had no Yordan Alvarez. Like, why do I have no Yordan Alvarez? That's stupid. So what I'm going to do is if I'm playing like the Yankees tonight, I'm going to make sure that Aaron Judge projection is moved from like 14 to 19. So he just ends up on my teams because I want the power bats. It's just simple. I need to get them in my lineup. So if you have the time to like comb through it and just like make sure that you get those guys, that's fine. But I just ran it real quick and kind of called it a day. But if I go through and do this, I am going to up the projections on the power bats that I do not want to miss on my lineups that I think have the ability to hit 2 home runs. Like if you're playing the Nationals tonight, Juan Soto, I'm going to bump up by like 4 fantasy points. You know who I'm not going to bump by 4 fantasy points? Cesar Hernandez. He's not hitting 2 home runs. Now, could he have a good game in the 1 hole? Correct. But I do think that Juan Soto is a guy that you should bump up. And I think whenever you are using an optimizer, bump up those power hitters to make sure they hit your teams.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, that was a point we hit on yesterday. Like the power hitters, they can overcome this. Yes, they're not going to, at this pace, put up the big numbers that we're used to seeing, but they can overcome on a game-by-game basis these baseballs and, the weather. That's obviously contributing to the low scoring as well. But, we'll continue to grind along. And, this is new to everyone. I mean, it's not just us. I mean, everyone has to adjust. And, we talked about it yesterday. At some point, we all think it's going to turn, whether it's the baseballs or the weather that gets things heading in the right direction. It's not going to continue at this pace, all summer long. And it does nobody any favors. Like from a betting perspective, who's excited? DC talked about betting some unders. That's to make money, but who's excited to go in there and jam a bunch of unders? You want to bet the overs and see home runs and see like 10 to 9 games for DFS purposes. The contest, I'm guessing, I could be wrong, we'll see, but if this continues on, I think that we'll start to see some overlay. No one's excited to play a MLB DFS slate and see 2 to 3 games and see the winning scores in GPPs on DraftKings be 120 or whatever it may be. People want home runs, people want big scores. I think it just affects every aspect of MLB negatively. From watching the game to betting on it, to playing fantasy, to fans going to the game. Yes, every once in a while, we talked about it. It's fun to go see a pitcher's duel, but when it's a pitcher's duel, you want it to be 2 big names. You want it to be, Max Scherzer and Clayton Kershaw. You want that. Those are the pitcher duels. When it's 4th and 5th guys in the rotation, you don't want a freaking pitcher's duel. So we'll see what the long-term effect is. We'll see what happens. We'll see, if it does change. We all kind of think it will at some point.
There's a reason the word like chicks dig the long ball is like a
Yes,
saying. You know
correct.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's just a reason for that. Like you don't want to go to these games and watch this. Like, listen, Stevie Boyton's not turning the game off. He's watching tonight, even if it's 2-0 or 10-10. I know you love baseball, Stevie. That's why I say it. The baseball purists, the guys who like love the game and grew up playing it, they're going to watch no matter what. You got to get everyone else involved and make them want to actually watch the games. And you know what? I'm not racing to watch games right now. Do I track it and keep on what's going on? Yeah, I do. But I'm not racing to put baseball games on right now, especially with the NBA playoffs.
It's not any fun to watch. I mean, I watch a lot. I'm still going to watch a lot of baseball, but the joy of it is just certainly taken out of it with the under betting. It was a couple of weeks ago. I realized like, okay, if I'm watching these games and just like so frustrated by the lack of offense in almost every single game, well, what's one way I can mitigate that somewhat?
Yeah.
Start pounding a lot of unders. And when at that point, when I looked, like unders were at like 63% on the season, the lines have adjusted downward, but I don't think that number has changed all that much. You see lower and lower totals every day. I will say maybe the one place, and obviously it's a big talking point on this, like Coors Field, I've mentioned it before, but the big thing it does as a ballpark to why offense is higher up there, lower strikeout rates because the pitches don't move as much. So that's nice in the current environment where no one can hit home runs. At least your guys have a better chance to put it in play. And then much higher batting averages on balls in play just because Coors Field is so massive because of the ball traveling farther. So they move the fences back, which, makes home runs not super crazy, but makes for a lot of base hits. So you do see that certainly reflected in that Coors Field total, right? Low totals everywhere, but still that one's sitting up at 10.5. So I don't know. Still might take the under on Coors tonight, to be honest. But
seriously,
but it's tough out there right now. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and we'll go through and obviously, find some winners here before we hop into the pitchers. Do us a favor, if you don't follow us on Twitter, get over there and hit that follow button. We're at about almost 15,000 subscribers. Once we hit the 15,000 number, we're going to do a swag and maybe a ticket giveaway as well. So we're about 200 shy of the 15K. So let's do that. And then if you are watching live, please hit the like and subscribe. Or if you're not watching live, I guess you can hit the like and subscribe as well. Helps us to continue to bring you guys these shows for free on a daily basis. So hit that like, hit that subscribe. Let's get into the pitcher talk. And like we kind of talked about, I mean, basically every pitcher every night is putting up a good fantasy score. Tonight, I think there's a lot of guys in the conversation. I am personally a guy that typically likes to keep my player pool at pitcher relatively tight. The one change I have made recently is opening it up and, just playing offense, then coming back and saying this pitcher fits, I'm good to go. And honestly, it's worked out in terms of getting the right amount of points from your pitcher. Obviously, the problem that we've talked about is getting the right amount of fantasy points from your hitters. But let's start 8K and above, go all the way to the top. Rodon is coming in at 10K. He's been phenomenal this season. Toughest matchup probably to date here against the Dodgers. A couple other names of note. Joe Ryan has been pitching really well for the Twins. He's 9.5K. And then Woodruff's in there at 8.9K. Not the greatest start to the season, coming off a tough performance there against Pittsburgh, but he had two pretty strong ones in the middle. So I'll go to you first, DC. Talk to me about this upper tier, 8.1K and above.
Yeah, to start off with ownership talk, I do think it's relevant, more and more relevant with all the pitchers doing well, because it's like not anybody, but a lot of pitchers can do it. Same thing on this slate, a bunch of guys that can put up 25 plus fantasy points. I'm seeing Woodruff coming in as the highest owned guy tonight, which makes sense, right? You do get a discount on him from the very highest price guys at 8,900. A great pitcher, a little bit of a slow start to the year for him. I'm not worried about him really whatsoever long term. Looks like the same guy that he was last year. Gets to pitch at home and gets this just horrible Reds team. What are they? I think they're 3-19 or something like that. Right now,
Votto out of the lineup too. I think he's on like the COVID list, so that's a guy that typically doesn't strike out a lot.
Missing guys from the lineup and just really nobody in this lineup that scares you at all for Woodruff. So I get why he's going to be popular. I expect him to pitch well, but I'm seeing you can get Carlos Rodon for maybe half of the ownership or even less than half the ownership. Listen, that's a move that I'm willing to make especially like you said, who like sacrificing $1,000 for one of your last bats. I mean, whatever. You could roster 2 cheap pitchers, take the highest priced guy at every, or the best projected guy at every position, and get a bunch of zeros anyway, right? You almost like would expect to. So I don't mind spending up a little bit to be a little bit more contrarian in pitcher. I do think Rodon still has the highest upside of any pitcher. To me, he is one of those matchup proof pitchers where if he's throwing his gas and attacking hitters, I know the Dodgers have a low strikeout rate technically against lefties, but he's a one of a kind lefty, right? He's throwing high heat at 97 pitch after pitch, can go deep into games, attacks the strike zone. I said it all season long. I think maybe the top overall fantasy arm for me at the moment. And I can get him a little ownership discount. So happy to pay that $10K for Carlos Rodon. He'll probably be my number one guy. I think he'll get a similar ownership discount on Alek Manoah going up against the Yankees. Another guy that's been very, very good this year. I know the Yankees have one of the higher, actually not really, 3.6 total for the Yankees. But Manoah has that big slider that can really kind of wipe out the majority of these right-handed bats for New York. So I think Manoah at 9,700 has got a really good chance for a great game. And then, yeah, we can't forget our guy, Joe Ryan for the Twins. Been phenomenal all year long. And he's doing exactly in the major leagues what he did all those years in the minor leagues. The Rays traded him last year, which made me think, oh, maybe they know something. They're a smart organization. But Ryan showing no signs whatsoever of slowing down, pounding the strike zone, goes deep into games, gets a bunch of strikeouts. And his biggest weakness has always been, and will probably continue to be, at least when they change the balls back, is the home run ball. Right now, though, in Baltimore, with these baseballs, those fly balls that he gives up are just all turning into outs. So I think he's really safe at 9,500. So yeah, those are my top 4 in terms of the exposure that I'll have. Probably Rodon 1, Ryan 2, Manoah 3, and then Woodruff 4. Just for the ownership fade, frankly, mostly. I feel really confident about those top 3 guys. I know they're going to be less owned than Woodruff, and there are a bunch of cheap bats that I like on this slate as well. So I'll take the ownership fade there. Wouldn't be surprised though if Woodruff, frankly, went on through a complete game shutout either. Yeah. So it's nothing to do with his skills or the matchup or anything like that.
Yeah. I think most people just go to him, you know, if they're playing one cheap guy and one expensive guy, they'll stop at him just because you're saving the money. They'll look to upgrade a bat or something instead of paying $1,100.
It's just such an easy click, right? I mean,
so easy. And like people look at his name and view him very similarly to the guys that are more expensive. So all 3 of those guys you mentioned at the top are Don, Manoah, Ryan. I think very, very strong options, you know, in tournaments because of the ownership difference. Mangone, talk to me about this top tier 8.1K and above.
Yeah, definitely a good range. I think I'm going to play more. I was just kind of looking before. I think I'm going to play more FanDuel today personally. So I'll touch on both though. I think my favorite pitcher at the top, and I think you can apply it to DK and FanDuel. If I had to pick between Rodon, like, well, that matchup against the Dodgers is definitely not ideal. Yes, he's a good pitcher, but don't need to go there. Alek Manoah, the key with him is he gets the Yankees, which they can strike out a bunch, but they do have some power bats. I think Joe Ryan is kind of the guy that I want to go to. Like, Baltimore is just a spot where all the pitchers are crushing there. It doesn't matter. I honestly think that we could get DC out there. I've never seen you throw a ball, but you might be able to throw a nice game out there, DC. I mean, it seems like this is just a park where anyone can pitch well right now. The adjustments, I mean, not only is it they move the ballpark fences back, but also with the ball, it just seems so simple. And you mentioned it on the show last week, DC, and that's why I jumped on him. Joe Ryan is a guy that likes to attack zones, right? You said he's not really the swing and miss guy, and he'll attack people. And you can attack this Orioles team, and you can attack in this ballpark because of long flyouts. So I think Joe Ryan is the best pitcher for me today. I think you make arguments for going some of these other options. Brandon Woodruff against Cincinnati. I don't think that's bad. One thing I want to call out is, yeah, it's 43 degrees in Milwaukee, but that roof is closed. So if you are someone that like is worried about some of these cold weather environments, at least you have a controlled temperature there in Milwaukee because that roof will be closed. So that's something to mention if you're thinking about offenses. Either way, though, Woodruff against Cincinnati. Cincinnati is just not a good team. So I think that you can play Woodruff. If I had to pick my 2 favorite guys, it's probably Woodruff and Joe Ryan. I'd say above that, like 8.1K range. And then on FanDuel, I got 3 teams right now. And like my thought process was I'll play 1 Joe Ryan, I'll play 1 Woodruff, and then I'll either maybe play another guy or I'll just go, double on one of them. I don't know exactly what I want to do yet, or if I load up more teams, maybe I'll change the approach, but for sure, those are my two favorite pitchers on this slate.
Yep, I like that call. And then the other thing, like we talked about, you said how you want to spread out your teams. I mean, I still really like the strategy right now of just putting your offenses in there and just playing whatever guy. I mean, a lot of these pitchers are just getting similar performances just based on the current situation in baseball. Let's go down to the lower tier. And, we talked about it yesterday with the guy, I believe is it Wells, whatever the hell his name is, the pitcher for the Orioles. He has 5.1K. Said, if you liked your team, just go ahead and play him. And he pitched well. I mean, that ballpark, like you touched on, Mangone is just so pitcher friendly. I'm fine coming down here for a few guys. I'll name them. The first one is Christian Javier for Houston, 6.8K at home. Has been pitching pretty well. Zimmerman is another guy that I have some interest in at 6.1K in that ballpark. He's been very steady all season long. I mean, if you look at just fantasy points, at least 14 fantasy points in every single game. At 6.1K, I'll take 14 and move on and hope my offense does something, which is not very likely, but hope that it does happen here at some point. So those are the two guys I think down here that I have the most interest in, and 6.8K, 6.1. Feel pretty good about them. DC, what do you got in this cheaper tier?
Yeah, I agree with you. Javier, I think number one for me down there. I do like the Twins. They're one of my favorite stacks, but that doesn't mean a whole lot this day and age. So yeah, Bruce Zimmerman has looked good so far to start the year. We know obviously a good place to pitch right now. He's going to give you the full workload, and that means that at 6.1K, he can certainly get the job done. A little bit higher than that. A couple guys I'm considering. I think Tyler Mahle for Cincinnati, 6.9K for him. He's a better pitcher than that. Slow start to the year, but not scared of Milwaukee. And you can certainly go in that direction. I do like Brad Keller a little bit for Kansas City. He's made some improvements this year. He's been solid throughout the year, 7,500. But St. Louis, they're like dead last in the league in most stats against right-handed pitching. A really, really heavy right-handed heavy lineup for St. Louis tonight, which they always have. They just don't have any lefties to even throw out there. And then Keller himself, much, much better against right-handed hitters than he is lefties. So matchup looks really good for Keller. We know Kansas City, obviously big ballpark and just tough to hit home runs there right now. No question about it. So Keller, 7,500, another guy, they can go out there and on a good day, give you close to 100 pitches, 6 or 7 innings. Matchup looks perfect. Don't see much ownership. So yeah, Keller, 7,500, kind of the last guy I'm considering. I guess the weather in Wrigley, cold and wind blowing in, just a massively favorable environment for pitching, given everything. And then Keegan Thompson, going to be the long reliever. He has been fantastic coming out of the bullpen. Now you're probably only going to get 3 or 4 innings out of him. Season high 56 pitch count last time out, but he is going to be the long reliever. So 4 innings can be enough to get the win. If the Cubs do win the game, the White Sox haven't been hitting. He's the cheapest guy on the board. So I can make a case for him as well. My only problem with playing a guy like Keegan Thompson is I do think a couple of those big guns, right? Rodon, Manoah, Ryan, Woodruff are going to have really good games. And Keegan Thompson doesn't really have that type of upside, but he's also, 5 to 6K cheaper than all those guys. So your lineup will be a lot different if you have them. If you do somehow manage to pick some good hitters for your lineup, you could potentially, at least in theory, make up the difference between Woodruff putting up 28, you get 15 from Thompson. That's 1 home run. Now, harder to come by that home run than it used to be, but in theory, at least, that makes some sense to me.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Mangone, thoughts in this cheaper tier?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely go down here, Hoop. I sort of agree with what you're saying. Like building with your offense that you want makes sense. Like, for instance, I just put in like 2 pitchers that I liked. I said Ryan and Woodruff, and then I threw in the Angels offense because I like that offense today. And then I noticed I had for my last 3 spots, if I play all the guys that I wanted to, I got like 2K for the last 3. So that's where you can maybe make some upgrades and change some stuff around and look for some other cheap pitching options below in this range. So if you do dive down deep here, I think that any pitcher in Baltimore is in the conversation today. listen, at 6.1K, I don't think Zimmerman is the worst idea. I think Javier is definitely in play too against Seattle. I think you can take a shot there at 6.8K. I'm not going to take any chances on these like pitchers and cores. Again, I'm down to get different at pitcher, but that's a spot where we don't have to be doing that. Yeah. I think that's unnecessary. Maybe you could do it with like a Marquez. He's like the only guy I ever really consider it with, but I just don't think it's the right spot to do it here on this slate. And I just think like Woodruff's cheap enough where I don't know if I just need to go down too much down here. I liked what DC said about going to like a Keller. I don't think that's a bad idea, but I'm not jumping to play like a lot of these guys down here. I think you could definitely, no doubt in my mind, want to play at least one pitcher above Woodruff today. I think that makes a lot of sense. Grab at least one of them. If you can grab two, that's great. But if you need to grab a cheaper one, just grab one. I don't think you want to go to two really cheap pitchers today.
Yeah, and that is really a good point, moving forward with, playing double cheap. The reason you go double cheap is so you can stack the big offenses essentially. Well, the big offenses just aren't necessarily putting up the big points like they did in the past. So maybe that's a difference in lineup construction. Focus on these top tier pitchers. You know what you're getting out of them. I don't know. We're still kind of digging through all this, the new changes and whatnot with scoring, but let's head on over to offense. Before we do that, though, let's hit up on the members never win segment. And obviously that's a play on words because our members do quite well. And we're going to feature one member today. And it's our guy, Simo. Took down $40,000. So we wanted to congratulate Simo, CEMO, for taking down that $40,000. So congratulations. We got a nice little graphic in honor of Simo and his $40,000 win. So congratulations to you. We'll go position by position. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Titled likes to do the stacks before the positions. We'll do the stacks at the end. And catcher is obviously a very weak position with not many offenses to choose from. Not a ton at the catcher position. We talked about it yesterday. Just getting out of the position as cheap as possible. DC, I think your boy Travis d'Arnaud did get the job done, though. I believe I think he had an RBI double. Potentially, I can't remember exactly what it was, but we talked about going all the way up. No one would go up there. His ownership was low, and he was one of very few catchers that did anything yesterday. So, give me your thoughts here at the catcher position.
Those RBI doubles are a game changer these days. So yeah, good job, Travis d'Arnaud.
It is crazy. Just if you sit and watch your teams, it's like in the past when scoring was normal, RBI double, you'd move up a little bit.
Yeah.
Now you're like going from like bottom 50% to like cashing instantly. It is crazy.
I used to get tilted when my guys would get walked, right? Because the bat's over and you only got the 2 points. I'll take any points I get from my guys right now. I'll take my walks. But yeah, catcher top end looks frankly pretty rough. Sean Murphy has shown power, gets a good matchup against Ryan Yarbrough returning from injury. I do like Gary Sanchez. Again, don't love taking hitters in Baltimore right now. And Zimmerman is a respectable pitcher for sure, but it's just such a weak position that anybody that's got any reasonable kind of upside kind of needs to be mentioned. But I will say most of my teams tonight will have one catcher. That's MJ Melendez for the Kansas City Royals. His MLB debut tonight, he's hitting 7th, led all of minor leagues in home runs last year. 41 home runs from Melendez, was legitimately like the best hitter in minor league baseball last year. He's 2K and gets a really good matchup against Dakota Hudson for St. Louis, who has always struggled against lefties. Melendez has big power to all fields. Most of these rookies, frankly, have struggled, right off the gate, and maybe he will too. But he's one of the reasons why I feel pretty comfortable paying up for 2 big arms, because to me, he's well underpriced for the skill set he brings, especially at a weak position and when there's big arms to pay for. So MJ Melendez for Kansas City, definitely the catcher I'll have the most exposure to.
Yeah, I like that call. I mean, 2K, you get out of the position for the minimum, and it's a guy that obviously has some upside. So great option there. Another guy I think was upside that we talked about, Maldonado, bottom of the Astros lineup, 2.1K. Mangone, anything else here at the catcher position?
Yeah, I definitely like those 2 calls, Melendez and Maldonado. If you want to just punt, like those are the two guys I think I'd go all the way down to. The problem is like when I get a little higher up, right? Like in that mid tier, like the next guys that pop up to me are like Ruiz in the Coors game, but like, do I want to spend like 3.8 at my catcher today? I just don't know. I think Max Stassi at 3.7 is another good one on the Angels that you can take a shot on, but I just think punting catcher might be the move today. Like, I think I'm not playing like 150 lineups, so like I wouldn't be like locking in a certain catcher or anything, but I'm not playing as many teams. And I just think I'm just going to mainly build all my teams with just punts. I mean, if it naturally falls where I get like a pretty good catcher at the top, then maybe I'll like think about it a little bit. But I really just like the idea of punting the catcher position today to be able to get a lot of big bats and those other pitchers that I talked about in my lineups today. So I think that punting the catcher makes a lot of sense. If I did go all the way up at the top, Diaz at 4.9, obviously a good, attacking these Coors hitters is a good idea. At 4.9, I don't mind it, but you could also, if you think Melendez doesn't get the job done, Salvador Perez at 4.5, he's a guy that has power. And if you aren't thinking that Hudson's not great pitcher, DC, right? Yeah. And you have the money, spending on like a Sal Perez is not a bad idea.
Yeah, certainly. And not many people are going to do that. I mean, I can't imagine many people going up to the top here. So I think like Perez, Diaz, very interesting spends at the position. First base, most of the ownership here, I think, is going to go to Coors Field. You have CJ Cron at 5.3K, Josh Bell at 4.5K. I think that's where you see a majority of the ownership. I like the Angels guys. Walsh, I think, is a really good play at 3.7K. Ohtani all the way up at 5.7. Just kind of a few guys that stand out. I kind of like the Brewers a little bit. Rowdy Tellez, 3.9K, has enough power to overcome the baseballs I think that they're using. Mangone, I will stick with you. What are you doing here at first base?
Yeah, first base, it's tough because I think it's going to be no secret as we go on. I think the Angels are an interesting team to target today, but like, do I want to spend on Ohtani? Like, he has not been great this year, but yeah, he is a power bat. I do know that in Boston, though, the one worry is like that right field. It's not the easiest to hit home runs out. It's easier to hit it over the monster than it is on the other side. So that's something I'm thinking a little bit about when kind of handling that team. I think Ohtani's fine at the top. He's probably one of the better options. Same with like a Vlad Guerrero Jr. They both have power and pop, but also CJ Cron against Fetty. Fetty is someone that we've definitely been targeting in DFS. And I think that CJ Cron is definitely, if you are playing the core stack, I'm not keeping him off of my stack. I'm going to make sure to prioritize him for sure in my lineups. If I am playing the Angels, and yes, I can put Ohtani in the outfield, but I think Walsh is really interesting at 3.7K. Feels like a good price tag on a guy that has legit like 2 home run upside. So I think that he is definitely my like cheapest option around, kind of with Tellez. Those are like the two guys that I'm kind of keying in on the most as my cheap guys at the first base position.
Like it. DC, thoughts here at first base?
Yeah, Ohtani, my top guy here. I know he hasn't been quite as good this year to start it out, but I'm not worried really about that with him. I'll take the matchup with Waka. You get a, not great hitting environment or great hitting weather rather in Boston. The right field, it's tough to hit home runs out there, but Ohtani obviously has as much power as anybody. He's also a guy that does go opposite field quite a bit. I could easily see him just kind of, frankly, flicking one over the green monster. He's got the power to do something like that. So he's my number one. But yeah, Vlad Guerrero Jr. Of course, the Coors guys, I think especially Josh Bell at 4,500 is going to come in really highly owned. I think deservedly so. CJ Cron obviously is going to carry a lot of ownership just because the totals in that game much higher than anywhere else you look. Cheap guys, Carlos Santana for the Royals. It's been ugly so far this year on the surface, but beneath the hood metrics look actually pretty good for him. He's been hitting the ball hard recently. Some bad luck. That's a lot of hitters, frankly, just because of the dead ball, but he's 2,300. There's a bunch of Royals, those left-handed bats for the Royals. I really do like quite a bit. You can get them for super cheap, spend up at pitching and fill out your lineups with the top one-off bats on the slate. So that's a strategy that I do like. Santana sitting down there, 2,300, I think is a pretty good punt play if you want to, again, spend up at other positions. And because, I don't think the top end of this is any slam dunks. So I don't mind going a little cheaper there, spending up elsewhere.
Yeah, cheap price tag Santana. Yeah, 2.3K guy batting in the middle of the order. I like that call for sure. Head on over to second base, and I think it's another position where we see the Coors guys, with likely the most ownership. Cesar Hernandez, really cheap price tag, assuming he's leading off 3.5K. He's going to be very popular. Brendan Rodgers is another guy that I think will get some ownership. He's batting seventh, but 3.4K for a team that's projected to score almost 6 runs tonight. But I do think there's other ways to go at this position. Jorge Polanco, 4K, I think is a fine play. Like I said, I like the Brewers a little bit. Colton Wong at 4-1. Jack Mayfield, I'm with you guys on the Angels. He's batting 6, only 2.7K. So actually, I think it's a pretty deep position. A lot of different ways you can go. DC, what are your thoughts here at second?
Yeah, you hit on most of the guys I wanted to bring up. I'd throw Brandon Lowe into the mix against Paul Blackburn out in Oakland. He's got the power to do the damage for sure. I really like Polanco. Again, Zimmerman we think is a fine play for sure, but that doesn't mean the Twins aren't also in play. So I think Polanco pretty high up there for me. I could see the Blue Jays doing some damage. Team with a deep lineup that can turn it over. Santiago Espinal has been pretty solid this year. He's at 3,700, hitting ninth, but that'll obviously work to reduce his ownership. And then Mayfield, like you mentioned, too, 2,700. I think looks like probably the cheapest guy out there. Maybe we'll get a start or two from lineups that we don't have, but in terms of what we see now, Mayfield would probably be the cheapest I'd be willing to go.
Mango, what do you got here at second?
Yeah, I mean, you're right about Cesar Hernandez. Like, he's like the chalk option, the cash game guy. Like, you plug him in. If you just want you need a cheap guy, 3.5. I don't hate it. I do like Jack Mayfield a lot, but more so in the stack, not as much as like a one-off. Like, I think if the Angels go off, I think, he's not just going to be like the one solo guy that does it. It's mainly because, hey, like Waka gets beat up and they just like really kind of get in that bullpen a little bit, and the guys are all teeing off on him. So I like Mayfield as a punt, though. I think he's not a bad option. At the top, there's some decent guys, but no one I'm dying to play. I mean, you got Jose Altuve at 4.6. It's a really nice price tag on Altuve. I'm pretty sure he's in the BVP camp too. I can't remember, but that's just a nice price tag on him that's not adjusted properly. If you are on the Boston side today, which I don't mind Boston too. I think they could take advantage of a guy like Noah Syndergaard. He hasn't been incredible to start the year. And I would not be surprised if he just out of nowhere is still not that great of a pitcher and elite anymore. And he can easily throw some meatballs across the plate. And someone that can take him yard is Trevor Story. You'd rather him against a lefty, but I do think that Trevor Story is another spend up at 4.8. That does feel a little bit cheap. Would I rather play Muncy at 5.2 or Edman at 5.4? Probably not. I think the power bats up at the top for me are Trevor Story and Altuve if I don't go cheap.
Yep, very good. Third base. We got our boy Jose Miranda. We talked about him yesterday. He's now batting 5th. He's still 2K, a big time prospect. Didn't get the job done yesterday, but 2K batting 5th. I think a great option at the third base position. Ryan McMahon will be popular, 4.6K, part of those Rocky stack. We just talked about Mayfield. You can play him at third base as well. Alex Bregman, 5K. The Astros are one of the few teams that have a decent team total today. So just a few of the guys that kind of stand out at first base or at third base. Mangone, what are your thoughts here at third?
Yeah, third base, normally a pretty good position to roster guys. If you are going to attack Chris Flexen, I do like getting Alex Bregman in your lineups. Another guy in that Boston and Angels game, Rafael Devers. He is a guy that has huge power and pop, someone that you could definitely get into your lineups. I know, again, he's expensive, and there's a lot of expensive bats that we might want to try and get into our lineups. That way we can get some home runs. But if there is a guy that has power and pop to get it done and is worth spending on, I don't want to spend on Tommy Edman. I want to spend on Rafael Devers, a guy that has a ton of power. And when it's just one swing of the bat, he can get me 18.7 on FanDuel or 14 on DK right away. So I like Devers a lot. I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards Ryan McMahon just because they see 4.6K in Coors in the 5-hole. Just makes a lot of sense. Right below him is a guy that might not get as much ownership. Anthony Rendon in the 4-hole for the Angels at 4.4K. So there's a lot of good guys, I think, at the top. One more cheap guy to mention that likely going to be in the Coors lineup. He's either going to get you 0 or probably get you a home run. It's Maikel Franco. That's just how he is. He's very boom bust. Don't be surprised if he sinks your lineups at 2.8K, but if he is in the lineup, he's definitely going to be someone that is in the conversation for me as an option, especially if you're stacking up Coors, because we know what kind of power he can have. And DC has said it pretty well. The one thing that's at least nice about Coors is the ball's not going to move as much. And if the ball's not going to move as much, Maikel Franco, if it's not moving, he's able to hit those balls and bang them out.
Real cheap too. I mean, 2.8K gets you exposure to Coors with some pops. I do like that call on Franco. DC, what do you got here at third base?
Yeah, I do think Miranda is the best, point per dollar option. Not that that's all that relevant in baseball in general, and especially talking about a 2K guy. But if you need the salary savings, don't be afraid to go to Miranda there at 2K. One game didn't get it done, like you said, Hoop, but I think he's gonna be really solid going forward. I like the Devers call. Actually, Boston in general, I think, is a little bit interesting. Mangone, you mentioned Syndergaard not being elite anymore, maybe not being elite. I think pretty clearly he's not elite. He's had a million injuries. He's pitched okay to start the year, but velocity.
DC, you're better at this. Are the underlying metrics from what I'm seeing? It seems like it's not good. It seems like he's a guy actually like we should be targeting today, and it's going to turn the wrong way.
Yeah, some of the underlying metrics have been okay, but he's clearly down like 3 to 4 miles per hour from peak on the velocity, and hasn't really changed much besides that, which makes sense, all the injuries he's had. So it's pretty clear he's just not going to be the same guy that he once was. Boston crushes at home. And then also, nice thing about Syndergaard is you can just steal bases like crazy against him, which those can add up quickly, especially with just points on offense so hard to come by. So I do like Devers up there. Again, he's not like a super speedster, but he's one of those guys that will maybe steal against a guy like Syndergaard, right? Like the slowest to home guy in the league. So I think Devers, a really good call at the top of the list. Of course, McMahon, if you just want to stack up Coors tonight and go with it, I really don't have a problem with that whatsoever. Chalk be damned. I'll take any teams that can put up some damn runs. So yeah, I think going with the Coors Field stack makes a lot of sense. Mac Chapman, I like a little bit at 4,100, and then I mentioned Miranda at the bottom. Clearly a really, really strong play. I do like those twin stacks a little bit. Would probably want to include Miranda in them.
Yeah, one more small thing to add that I want to ask you about, DC. Plawecki is the catcher for the Red Sox, right? He caught with Syndergaard for a while. Does that, we talked about that with Mitch Garver, remember earlier in the year on one of the shows? Does that ever get you excited? I'm not saying maybe to play Plawecki, but I don't know, maybe he can tell the guys hey, there's some tips that maybe Syndergaard can give off because of that. Is that something you think about ever?
Yeah, maybe. I'm probably not going to play Plawecki though, but perhaps he'll give the tips to his teammates. Yeah, I could see it.
If they home run, I'm gonna say it was my narrative. Okay, I'm just building the narrative for the reason for the Red Sox.
Yeah. Throw it out there.
Our boy in chat, Butthole Jenkins, asked about Moustakas at 2K. Any Moustakas for you, DC?
I can't do it with Moustakas right now. There's just certain players where it's haven't performed in a year and a half and hitting 100 with 0 home runs. Got to see. It does
create one of those double leverage situations if you're fading the highest owned pitcher and maybe, but man,
certainly
that's a tough play.
In theory, the game makes sense or the play makes sense, but not for me.
Agree. All right, let's go to shortstop. And man, this is a tough one. There are not many, if any, standout plays at the position. I mean, I think you can play Bo Bichette if you want to go up, Carlos Correa, Willie Adames, but I mean, you're paying a premium for all those guys. 4.8K for Correa, Bichette's 5K, Adames 5.1K. I mean, I do like the Brewers a little bit, but that's a steep price tag for Adames. Trey Turner's 5.7 against Rodon. Just a very tough position. I'd be fine just punting this spot off if I found a guy you have a couple Angels guys that are shortstop eligible. Andrew Velasquez, David Fletcher at the bottom of that order. Jose Iglesias is 4.2K in Coors, batting 9th. That's a big boy price tag for him. Xander Bogaerts 5.3. I mean, the position it sucks. And there's not any cheap guy that stands out. And the expensive guys just aren't in that great of spots. So I'll stick with you, Mangone. What are your thoughts here at the shortstop position?
Yeah, shortstop has some guys at the top. If you look the matchup, some of them are a little tougher. Trey Turner's not. one I'm looking to target. I would say, JP Crawford. I mean, yeah, the Seattle's been better this year, but do I want to pay 5-4 for JP Crawford? No, I don't want to do that. Xander Bogaerts is probably the guy that I like the most at the top at that 5.3K tag. Also think Bo Bichette against Tyon. He definitely has some power and pop and can get it done. I know the roof is going to be closed there too. So maybe that like gives a little bump for that, but I do think that Bo Bichette is an interesting option up there. I'll leave Carlos Correa to DC. I don't think I'm talking about Carlos Correa. I guess we'll see if he talks about him and the Twins. If you are playing Houston, plug in Jeremy Pena in. If you have the salary at 4.4K, I don't mind it, but there's not a lot of like cheap guys I really want to go to. The one that we do need to talk about is I think it's Lucius Fox. He is like a 2.6K shortstop in Coors. I don't know if you're going to need that on this slate, but you do have to mention it. It's a cheap price tag. And if you don't like the position, being able to plug in a cheap Coors guy is not normally a terrible idea.
Do you see what do you got here at shortstop?
Yeah, I think Wander Franco at the top is a good option. Xander Bogaerts. I like Boston kind of more as a stack. I mean, this goes for most teams than one-off, just because Syndergaard, I want guys on base, stealing bases, like I mentioned. I don't know if Podesta is necessarily going to do a bunch of damage via the home run, so I kind of want to stack those guys up and could see them, turning over that lineup. Perhaps Syndergaard is off his game. Mangone mentioned Correa. I do think he is one of the top plays at this position, 4,800. Kind of a theme, though. I mean, most of these positions, you're not, there's not a lot of players screaming out that you really want to get them in their lineups, even on an 11-game slate, which is pretty wild, but it is what it is. I do think the sneaky play here tonight, if you're not on Rodon or any teams that don't have him, is Trey Turner at 5,700. You'll get him at low ownership. Obviously can hit lefties well. The big thing though, Rodon, is one weakness. It is a very, very significant weakness. Has not had a caught stealing against him since 2018. Runners are 21 for 21 stealing bases. And even before that, 2018, he allowed 16 out of 20 base runners to steal. Given the lack of runs in general, I would be absolutely shocked if Trey Turner wasn't off stealing on the first or second pitch if he gets a chance against Rodon. Maybe a 2-steal type situation. Obviously a really good hitter anyway. You get the leverage against the Rodon teams, and it's kind of a weak position. So you add it all up, and I'll definitely have quite a bit of Rodon, but on teams that I don't, I'm going to try to prioritize getting a Trey Turner in there. And you can use him as a one-off too, right? Because not many people, no one is going to really stack the Dodgers. So you don't have to worry about him kind of getting swallowed up by a stack that has him and other Dodgers in it. And he is the one Dodger that I do kind of want to play against Carlos Rodon. So I think Trey Turner makes a lot of sense tonight.
Yeah, I like that play as well. Before we get into the outfield, let's see, we got about 370 watching, 170 likes. Good job, actually, because I really haven't asked that hard for likes. Let's just get to 229 more, and you guys will get the plays of the day at the end. So like I said, we're going to need 200 likes. Heading to the outfield, and like a lot of these positions, I think the Coors guys are going to be the high-owned options here. Specifically, the Nationals, pretty poor pricing on these Nationals guys. Soto 4.8K, Nelson Cruz 3.7. If Yadiel Hernandez in the lineup, 2.8K. Coors guys a little more expensive. Blackman, Connor Joe, Grichuk, and then you have Sam Hillard as a cheap option at 3.1K. Outside of those guys, I think you can get whoever you want really at relatively low ownership. I mean, I think like Trout and Ohtani will obviously get some ownership, but the rest of the position I think is pretty wide open. I do like the Brewers guys. I like Renfroe a little bit. I like McCutchen, Yelich. Those are guys I'll have in my lineups tonight. DC, what are your thoughts here in the outfield?
Yeah, there's always a million ways to go. The Angels guys, like you mentioned, Trout and Ohtani, if you don't have them at first base, make a ton of sense. Of course, all the players from Coors Field, I have no idea why Juan Soto is 4,800 going into Coors, but clearly, on paper, the best outfield play on the slate, at least in my opinion. Of course, Jordan Alvarez, I mean, he's doing it almost every night, gets an easy matchup against Chris Flexen. And one of those guys you can, feel pretty confident he's got a good chance of delivering for you. There's not many you can say that about right now. Ohtani, confidently one of those guys. Same thing with Mike Trout. I don't mind actually at this position taking some of these, like a lot of the upside bats on this slate come in the outfield, right? Like we didn't really like most of the infield positions, frankly, that much. So if you can, maybe you make a stack kind of with the low upside infield, and then grab an outfield of, Trout, Otani, and Soto, or Jordan Alvarez and Trout and Otani, or just mixing these guys. Charlie Blackmon, 4,900, and try to get George Springer. Just try to get the upside that these top end outfielders bring, because you can't find it really anywhere else. So maybe you can hit on the right 2 or 3 guys in the outfield, and if you do that, frankly, that'll probably be enough to carry you to a cash and in contention and GPPs. So I do like spending an outfield today, just because there's so much upside, and it's hard to say that about the other positions. But of course, there are cheaper guys very much in play. Julio Rodriguez had the caught stealing yesterday, so that was disappointing for me in titles play of the day. But he continues to wreak havoc, and the matchup for him is totally fine against Christian Javier. Get some leverage there as well. But yeah, mostly a spend position for me here. There are cheaper guys. Edward Olivares leading off for Kansas City. He's 2,200. They also have Kyle Isbell. I've mentioned the Royals. Or no, he's not in the lineup tonight, so never mind. Olivares, though, is leading off. But yeah, I think this position I do want to spend if possible, which certainly is if you go cheaper at a couple other positions.
Yeah, I mean, when you really put this position up against the others, I mean, all the top projected bats are in the outfield. I mean, second base, third, short, we're lacking the options. First base, a couple options. Catcher, there's nothing really there. And everything's here. And
there's enough high upside outfield bats that you do think a few of these guys are going to get there, right? So whereas like at the infield positions where there's maybe 1 or 2, if those guys fail, then your punt could be totally fine. But I think at outfield, I think we will see at least a few big scores out of these outfielders.
Yeah, I think overall you definitely want to be spending here. Mangone, give me your thoughts here at the outfield position.
Yeah, outfield definitely. It's feels a little loaded today. I feel like there's a lot of good options. Like, let's start with Juan Soto and Nelson Cruz's price tags for Washington, just way too cheap. Now they're going to have a lot of ownership, but they're definitely very good price tags on those guys. At the top, Mike Trout, Aaron Judge, like Otani, all those big bats, they're very good options. I know I don't really love targeting that Baltimore game, but Byron Buxton at 5.5, I think, is projecting pretty well today. I think Jordan Alvarez, you can keep riding that streak if you'd like to. Another guy that I like a lot is Kyle Tucker. I think this is a really good spot for him against Flexen. One thing about Flexen that we didn't talk enough about, he just doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, right? His strikeout rate is really low. When you just have a low strikeout rate, that means that at least the bat's getting on the ball right now. That's been a struggle. And Houston has at least a lot of power in their lineup. So I really like Kyle Tucker here in this spot. I'm probably gonna start talking about the Astros a little bit more because there's a bunch here. Like Michael Brantley, again, he's not like this power guy for you, but if you fall 3.9K, listen, I'll take a decent hitter at this point that'll just get some fantasy points and move on. So I don't mind him as an option. I did talk about Nelson Cruz, but I want to say again, it's 3.7K for Nelson Cruz and Coors. That is kind of a crazy price tag. Not as crazy as the Juan Soto tag at 4.5, but it's definitely a pretty good option. And then Sam Hilliard, another Coors option at 3.1K that you could plug into your lineups. But going dirt cheap for one guy at 2K in order to get in a Kyle Tucker, I think that's worth it. We're already getting a Jordan Alvarez, or let's say it's between Mike Trout and getting an upgrade from a 3.5 guy to a 2K guy. I think it's worth doing that, to just jumping up and grabbing that big power bat, because there's some really good power bats up there at the top.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, just look at this position. You match it up against the other ones. I mean, this is where the big time bats are. Coors bats very affordable, especially the national side of things. So we'll see. And I think the main point is you're going to need some points from your outfielders, some fantasy points. The other positions, I think you can get by with some weaker performances. But in the outfield, with all these guys here, you're going to need some home runs. You're going to need some big fantasy scores. All right, let's hop on over to the stacks. Talk about some stacks that stand out, and the obvious ones are Coors. A couple that stand out to me that aren't so obvious. I really like the Brewers. I think the Brewers have a chance to do some damage today at home. No cold weather. They're inside in a dome. And then the Angels as well. I think we're all kind of on the Angels. Don't think they'll be overly popular as like a full stack. Mangone, talk to me about a couple stacks that stand out to you today.
Yeah, I'll give you my top 3 stacks. So I think I've turned more on, instead of the Angels being my number 1, I think Angels are my number 3. My number 2, I'm gonna go with the Astros, just because, yeah, I think we got to look at like strikeout rates sometimes on some of these pitchers. And like, if you struggle to at least strike the guy out, at least I'm getting like the bat on the ball, which is important, just getting it in play. Maybe teams just make mistakes, and that can also kill a pitch count and then get you into the bullpen a little bit sooner. So I'm going to go with the Astros as my number 2. And then my number 1 is going to be Boston. I just like that power and pop. I like that ballpark. And I just not a believer in Syndergaard. The more I kind of looked at some stuff, I just think that we really got to be on Boston today. I think those power bats are my favorite today.
DC, what are some of your favorite stacks here tonight?
Yeah, my first 2 also going to come in that Fenway game. I'll go Angels over Boston, but that's going to be 1 and 2. I like the full-on game stack in that one. Not at all a believer in Waka and Syndergaard. I don't know. Just could see him struggling tonight in Fenway Park. Maybe Red Sox can do some damage on the bases as well. And then my third, I'm going to stick with the Twins. Again, don't love the park in Baltimore, and Zimmerman a decent pitcher, but I still really do like that Twins lineup. I see a lot of upside, especially in the top 5, but even beyond that, Gary Sanchez, Max Kepler is cheap. So I do kind of like that whole lineup. And maybe the Orioles won't have the lowest team ERA at home forever, and we'll see some regression starting tonight. So yeah, give me Angels, Red Sox, and Twins.
It is a very stackable lineup, that Twins lineup. I mean, a lot of solid pieces. They're affordable.
That ballpark is just so bad. Like, are you guys sure? Like, it's been awful all year long.
Yeah,
like,
I've been on top of it, but you can still string some hits together against Jordan Zimmerman. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just asking because like I don't even know how they did yesterday, but I saw it in Big T's core and I was like, man, I just don't know if I like that. Like, Again, I just, that ballpark I'm staying away from right now. That's just me, but I hope it works out for you. Obviously, I don't think you'll get a lot of ownership on him. And Zimmerman is someone like we were picking on in the past, but I just worry a lot about that park. That's why I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's got the triple combination. We got the baseballs, the cold weather. Actually, it's a little warmer there today, 65, but the ballpark as well. And changing the dimensions of the ballpark, obviously not helping with the scoring. But man, we'll see. It's got to change at some point, we'd assume. All right, let's get on to the plays of the day. And I am going to go first, and I'm going to go to the Brewers. I'm going with my boy Rowdy Tellez. He has enough power to overcome these weak baseballs, or whatever you want to call them, the dumbed down baseballs. He has the power to hit them out. So give me Rowdy Tellez as the rich parents play of the day. He's 3.9K over there on DraftKings. Next, we are going to DC with the mom's basement play of the day. Who do you got for us?
Yeah, MJ Melendez making his major league debut for Kansas City, 2K catcher. Mentioned it on the top of the show, led all of minor league baseball in home runs last year. Ton of power. Actually really love the matchup as well. And min price. And we know some of these guys, maybe the casual player hasn't heard of MJ Melendez. Certainly understand that. And I do think these guys, not that they always come through, but they're, to me, generally lower owned than they should be especially at these low price points. So I'll go with MJ Melendez as the mom's basement play today.
Yeah, and gets you out of a crappy position for the bare minimum price tag. So you can't beat that.
Even if he does nothing, it's not that bad of a play.
Correct. All right, Mangone, heading over to you for the Sweet Travis play of the day. Who do you got for us?
Yeah, let's give out a pitcher and let's give out a hitter. I'll give out Joe Ryan. Last time I played him, it worked out and I made him the play of the day. I want to go back to the well with him. I want to attack that ballpark. I just think everything aligns so well with him. So I'm jamming him onto my teams. And you know who else I'm jamming in there? Rafael Devers at the third base position. Like him as a spend up a lot. He just has so much power. And I want to get those guys in my lineups, right? If I have to punt a position to make sure I get him in there, I'm going to punt a position to make sure I get him in there. So give me Rafael Devers as my play of the day.
All right, sounds good. That's going to do it for the Run Pure Sports MLB Swing for the Fences show. We got our PGA show tonight with myself, AP, and Snyder, and then we have the premium NBA show tonight with JSU and Big T. So make sure you tune in to all of that. But we're going to get on out of here. Good luck tonight in your contest for Mangone, for DC. I'm Hoop. We'll see you guys later.